I've been a part of the Spooky Scary Storytime community. You already know that the feral people of Appalachia and mountainous regions is one conspiracy theory that I 100% believe in. A lot of times I dismiss others where I'm like, there's probably another explanation, but I think this story is another one that just confirms what I've already been thinking. It's either feral people or there's some kind of criminal ring operating out of these regions with caves. Fun fact, there are thousands of caves in the Appalachian region, with over 400 miles of underground caves beneath Mammoth National Park in Kentucky alone. That's where this story comes from. This came from someone named Kyle, and he said last summer he and his family were camping in Mammoth National Park. I didn't mention which campground his family was actually camping out. I looked it up. There's apparently hundreds, but I did reach back out to him asking to confirm which one it was because I feel like that's relevant. But he says that they were out there for 3 nights. This is apparently something that he and his family have done every single summer since he was small. But the first night was fine. They woke up, went about their day. Second night, they go to sleep. They wake up and they notice that there's certain tools missing from around their campsite. I say tools, but he specifically mentioned a flashlight, a skillet, and a campfire coffee pot. Change of clothes that belonged to his sister was apparently also hanging on the back of a camping chair. And when they woke up, that was gone. And they scanned the area thinking maybe the wind had blown it off and they couldn't find it anywhere. So they're like, that's weird, but maybe an animal. I don't know. Things happen. Things disappear in the woods, I guess. Anyway, that night they are getting ready to make dinner. It's dusk, so sun hasn't completely gone down yet, but they're all sitting around, hanging out, having family time. Kyle, his dad, his sister, and his sister's boyfriend, by the way. But they're hanging out and they hear a little voice coming from the woods, and it's, hello, hello. They look up thinking it's a nearby camper, though he did say where they were camping at, they couldn't see any other sites, so they knew there were other camping sites around. So they see this little girl come walking onto their camping site. She's about 6 to 8 years old. She's extremely dirty. She's wearing two mismatched shoes. And she says, I lost mommy and daddy. They scan the area. Don't see any other adults around. Kyle's dad stands up. He's like, I'm going to go help her figure out where her parents are because clearly if a child's out here, there have to be parents nearby. We're a few miles from the road where they had cell phone service, but in this particular campsite, they did not. So I guess that's why they didn't immediately call somebody. But Kyle's dad's like, they can't be far. So he stands up. The sister stands up. She's like, I'll go with you. And they walk with the little girl. They're like, do you remember where you came from? Which direction they're in? What are your parents' names? What do they look like? And this girl's like, I don't know. I don't know. And he said the way that she was talking reminded him of how a toddler talks, not the way like a 6 to 7 to 8-year-old talks. She's stammering. She's not using proper sentence structure. I'll assume she either has a speech issue or that she just is so scared that she doesn't know where she came from. So she said, I think it's this way, or I think this way. And she leads them into the woods. Kyle stands up to go with them. The boyfriend stays back at the campsite, I guess, to watch the food or whatever. Get far enough into the woods that they can no longer see their own campsite. And Kyle's dad is looking around. They're all looking around to see if they can see any other campsites that are active with people, but they can't see anything. And this girl's looking around too, but then all of a sudden she's like, it's this way. She starts leading them through trees and they're following her because they assume that she knows where she's going. But she leads them straight to the mouth of a cave. At this point, the sun has set and they can't see in the cave beyond a few feet. She says, in here, and she runs in the cave. Kyle's sister is alarmed and she starts running into the cave after this little girl, and her dad stops her. He's from the region, apparently, tells her, caves can be dangerous. We don't know exactly where she went. I'll try to follow her as far as I can. So he walks in the cave, he starts calling for her, and it's dead silent. He can't see anything. Hear him getting farther and farther in the cave yelling, hello, hello, but they don't hear any other voices. But then after a minute or two, he comes running out of the cave and he's huffing and puffing and he's like, we need to head back to our campsite right now. Kyle and his sister are like, why? What's going on? He's like, I heard other voices talking in the cave and they weren't speaking English. I don't know what the language was. I don't know who those people were, but there were other people in the cave. So they book it back to the campsite. They hop in the truck. They head to the main road where they have cell phone service and he calls the rangers, I guess. The main campground. I don't know. His email wasn't exactly clear on who they called, but the ranger comes out. He's taking a statement and he's almost gaslighting them. And they're like, yeah, we saw this little girl. She led us to a cave. We heard other voices in the cave. We think there's some people living in there. And the ranger's like, no, that's not what you saw. Are you sure it wasn't a little bunny rabbit? I was like, it was so bizarre. His dad starts getting irate. He's like, there is a little girl that is in that cave with other people. I'm telling you what I saw. I'm a grown man. I've lived here my entire life. I know what I saw. Ranger's like, sir, we need you to calm down. You need to relax. You need to lower your voice. You need to not talk to us with that. And they start turning it like he's somehow doing something wrong. He's like, well, I'm just concerned that it's a missing child or it's a lost child who now wandered into these woods. And the ranger says something that made Kyle's hair on the back of his neck stand up. He says, no, if there was a child, which there wasn't, she's not an endangered or missing child. She belongs here. Like, what? He's like, all right, listen, if it makes you feel better, we'll send some people out to check the area tomorrow, but no guarantees. We'll let you know. They never heard anything else. Kyle says, I don't know. I never thought that there was anything to these Appalachia stories. I've heard the no whistling in the woods. I've heard other legends that you're not supposed to do out there. I've heard about feral people. I just never believed it until I experienced something myself that I still think about and I still can't explain. So, what do you think? If you have a spooky, scary story time that you think no one would believe or that you just want to get it off your chest, send it in. We'd love to hear it.
I'm gonna keep this intro short and sweet because, good lord, this was weird. My name is Julian and I'm from New Zealand. I moved to the UK as a teen with my family, who were all natives and quite big believers in the paranormal. I was 21 when this happened, and my partner was 22. Just before everything hit in 2020, me and some of my friends and my partner and his friends all decided to stay in a cabin we found on Airbnb in the mountains. The minute we got to this cabin, I felt like there were eyes burning a hole through the back of my skull. Every tree around me felt like it was swaying artificially, as if they were remote controlled. I mentioned it to my partner, and he told me everything was going to be fine, and I was probably just anxious. The feeling never went away, though. Well, we get into the cabin, and I was in charge of putting away the food we had brought into the fridge and cupboards. I knew about the rules, having heard about them through a friend who had lived in East Tennessee for a few years. However, the others weren't so aware. So, as I'm pulling a case of beer into the fridge, I thought I saw someone walk into the kitchen. Instinctively, I looked up, and there was no one. I was a bit weirded out, but I chalked it up to me just being paranoid. A few hours later, we were all sat in the living room just having a laugh, and I get up to use the bathroom. So I finish up in the bathroom, and I walk towards the stairs when I feel something brush my lower back. I thought it was just my hair because it's pretty long and I needed a haircut anyways. I would have brushed it off if it hadn't happened again. This time I turned around and swore I saw something, but the only person in the hallway was myself. I wish that was the end of it. In this Airbnb, there were 4 bedrooms and 10 people. We decided to have 2 to a room. Me and my partner would sleep downstairs. Again, that feeling still wasn't going away, and he slept on the air mattress on the floor and I was on the sofa. I didn't sleep that night. The feeling of being watched never went away from me. It was light in the room because we couldn't figure out how to turn the porch light off and the curtains were quite thin. I'm laying there looking around, searching for any pull of sleep at my eyelids, and my partner was sleeping on the floor next to me. The way the living room was laid out was there was 3 windows, one behind my head, one 3 meters away from the foot of the sofa, and the other one next to it that I could see out of if I shifted my position ever so slightly. I decided I would just go on my phone for a bit to try and distract myself from this awful feeling. Doing this, I had shifted to where the 3rd window was visible. I, all of a sudden, heard a small thud coming from the porch. It scared me a bit. I thought it was a fox because of how quiet it was. It was walking around the porch, and I would have ignored it if the footsteps sounded normal. The way I can describe it, it was this dull thud of someone rolling their ankle onto the floor with each step. The steps lasted for around a minute, then they stopped. I was looking at my phone, and in the corner of my eye I see a shadow in the window. I look up and it's the silhouette of a person. I wish I could describe the height better than taller than average, but I was so petrified I could hardly register what I was seeing. I remember it swaying, exactly like the trees were when I first arrived. Slow, artificial, and horrifying. It was humming a bit like a radiator, but it was a lot higher pitched and quieter. I ended up dropping my phone onto the sofa where it made a small thud, and this was enough for this creature to stop swaying and stay still. I heard it make the slightest gasp as it stood up straight. It didn't move its head, but I felt its eyes on me. I couldn't make out any facial features because I was only seeing it through the curtains. I knew it was watching me blindly, as if it could hear my heartbeat. After about 30 droning seconds of this thing staying painfully still, it got scared like a horse when seeing something that scares it, but then it returned to its previous stature and placed a hand on the window. It tapped its fingers from pinky to index on the window, and all I could do was watch, paralyzed with terror. It brought its other hand up to the window and did the same thing with the other, matching the rhythm perfectly. At this point, I didn't realize that my partner had woken up from the tapping and seeing the same thing that I was. After what felt like hours of this tapping the window, it put its foot up to the windowsill outside and just kept it there. It then put its other foot up on the windowsill and jumped onto the roof, releasing a horrible, gargled yelp as it did. It crawled on the roof, circling a few times, and then I heard it jump onto the clearing behind the house and run away into the tree line. I was sitting there processing whatever I had just seen. My partner sits up and says something along the lines of, "What was that?" We ended up sitting on the sofa and watching a movie on his laptop until the sun came up. We did tell the others what happened, and they looked at us like we were crazy. Me and a few others went out while doing so, and we saw muddy handprints on the windows, mixed with specks of red and a footprint on the windowsill where it jumped up. We called everyone outside to see them, and one of the friends who hadn't spoken all morning told us that he heard the noises on the roof, but he thought it was one of us walking to the bathroom. We made the decision to cut the trip short and go back home, and I haven't had anything happen to me since then. But I still feel like I see things out of the corner of my eyes, shadows lurking, even when it's light, people watching me even when I'm alone, and it's really scary. This happened in early 2020. We were all 21 to 25 and have no known mental issues that could produce hallucinations, nor were we on any hallucinogens. We're all truly stuck on what happened, and any feedback on what this was would be wonderful. Any ways to stop the shadowy figures around my house are also appreciated. Love your content and thought this was interesting enough to be shared. Let's talk about that. Also, there's going to be a separate video on whatever we heard during this because I don't know. So that was probably exactly what you were thinking. I've said it before and I will say it again. The trees are not always trees here. Sometimes they are things pretending to be trees. And it seems like that's exactly what you encountered because you said it was the same swaying that's just not quite right. Ignoring it is literally the best thing you can do. You can set up protections, but when you're at someone's Airbnb, you kind of just, have to go with it and hope that you know the rules. It had to be so comforting having a partner there that was also experiencing it though, because it's like, okay, obviously it's not in my head if someone else is seeing it, and then having that other friend who heard it on the roof too. I want to know where this Airbnb is because I want to stay in it. I'm gonna reach out.
Everyone is throwing in their Appalachia spooky stories and lore on TikTok right now, and I thought I would throw my hat into the ring. As an author, storyteller, and hiker of Appalachia, I have a couple stories of my own and lore from the region I grew up in. So, a lot of people associate Appalachia to the Appalachian region for good reason, which is like West Virginia and Tennessee. But Appalachia extends all the way up into Canada. And as a New Hampshire resident, we actually have one of the hardest ranges of Appalachia through our state, also known as the White Mountains. Anyone in the hiking world who knows anything about hiking knows that the White Mountains don't play. They're some of the most dangerous regions on the East Coast for just any outdoors experiences. A lot of people, and I get frustrated, other local hikers get frustrated when hiker tourists come into the region and don't respect these mountains. Rule number one of this region of Appalachia: you respect these mountains. Hundreds of hikers die and go missing a year because they don't respect these mountains, especially our tallest mountain in the region, Mount Washington, which a lot of people call the Everest of the East. You guys might have heard of this mountain. It tracks some of the fastest wind speeds in the world. It has some of the craziest weather conditions. And a lot of the locals and Native American tribes from the region claim it's because the mountain itself is cursed. It has some of the hardest skiing in the region called Tuckerman's Ravine. But anyone who knows Mount Washington knows if that mountain doesn't want you on it, you listen. Whether lore or local weather patterns, Mount Washington has to be respected. And that's just one part of the region. Anyone hiking the Appalachian Trail knows the hardest region of that trail is in New Hampshire, and to respect it accordingly. A lot of people believe that just because the mountains aren't as tall as, say, the Rockies, that they're easy to hike, and that's just not the case. And once again, you can lend this to just the super volatile nature of this region of mountains, or you can lean into the more supernatural side of things. Either way, this is still part of the Appalachian range, so Appalachian rules 100% apply. For those of you who need a refresher, it's basically never operate with any sense of fear. If you hear something, no, you didn't. If you see something, no, you didn't. Stay on the trail, lock in, and do not mess around with things you don't understand. As a hiker, I respect this 100%. As a local, I respect these trails and these mountains so incredibly much. And there was one time, I have one story, where I believe that heavy respect protected me. So my partner and I at the time were finishing up a double summit hike. So we summited two mountains in one loop, and then we were on our way home. On the way down from the second mountain, we realized that we were not going to be making it back to our cars before dark, which for someone who isn't experienced and didn't pack and prepare, that can be terrifying. Fortunately, we packed our headlamps. Unfortunately, the battery died in mine. It just started to dim, like something was draining its energy. And I'll tell you, it was creepy as creepy can be. All the trees were just silhouetted against the night. There was fog building up. When we were crossing empty fields, there's abandoned farmhouses. And really, you got to keep your eye on the trail. One, because you're going to fall, and two, because you don't want to stare at something too long, like up into the trees, and see something you weren't supposed to see. During dusk and into nighttime, there is one thing that to this day I still can't explain. And it wasn't scary, but looking back on it, I just, even myself and my scientist brain, I can't explain it. For miles, at dusk and at night, we could not escape this very sweet apple scent the entire time we were walking once the sun started going down. And at first, I thought we were going past trees or some type of foliage or flowers that flowered in the fall or something. But no matter how much I looked, there was nothing that I could find that grew in that region that had that smell. During the time, I thought it was a very positive presence. My partner, obviously, he smelt it, but he's not like the spiritual type. And he just completely brushed it off, ignored it. But I was like, there is no way that this is a plant because this has been following us since dusk. And usually, if you're hiking, the smell goes away as you hike away from a specific plant or something. I'm like, neither of us have apples on us. We didn't smell this during the day. Why now? And of course, I'm scouring lore of Appalachia. I'm looking up different things, trying to figure out what that scent was because we both smelt it. It wasn't just me, it was my partner as well. And like I said, he doesn't believe in supernatural lore whatsoever. So the fact that he smelt it and admitted that it was weird that it was following us, weird. And at this point, if you know what this is, let me know. But personally, the only thing I could think of is that it was a protective spirit. The smell was so sweet and comforting and protective that part of me almost believes that something in the mountains understood that we were both hikers who respected that region, who loved that region, and spend a lot of time in that region. And I think since we were there past the dark, past when it was safe to be in those woods, something saw that we loved those mountains so much and was protecting us. And that's the only thing I can think of because despite how creepy and due to Appalachian lore, dangerous our situation was, we never had any really negative experience. As long as that smell was around us, we were safe. We made it back to our cars and we got home safe. To this day, that's the only explanation I have. If you stayed this long, respect the mountains, respect Appalachia, and just enjoy the beauty that nature brings. And if you carry that respect, I think it gives you an ounce of safety in those woods. My experience in Appalachia and some scary stories, part two. And apologies, the background does not match the story, but your girl's on vacation visiting some familia, so you guys are just gonna have to deal with it. So in my first story, I brushed on some hiking that I did in the northern part of Appalachia in New Hampshire called the White Mountain region. This next story comes from the Adirondacks, which are the region of Appalachia in upstate New York. And outside when I got possessed in a graveyard, this is probably the scariest story that I have, slash the scariest hiking story that I've ever had. So at the time, my partner and I were doing a 2-day hike. So we hiked part of the journey and then we camped out overnight. And then we were going to finish the rest of the hike the following day. So this is another overnight Appalachia story where I was camping out in the middle of the woods where no one else was around. I'll add some photos from this hike. We were hiking Algonquin, which is one of the tallest mountains in Appalachia, and we were doing one of the tallest mountains in the Adirondacks slash Appalachia. And we were doing, I'll add some photos to it. We were doing a 2-day hike to get out to the mountain because, like I said, it was in the middle of nowhere. So the hike was actually longer than needed. And like I said, no one else was around. My partner and I had set up camp for the night when a thunderstorm started rolling in. So we got into our tent as thunder started crashing overhead. Rain was pelting us left and right. We were fortunately in a tent, which was good, but just the wind was stirring everything. It was a very, very creepy night. We fell asleep to thunderstorms and lightning flashes, and I don't know how we fell asleep, but we did. But what happened after is the scary part. So my partner at the time, he had a Labradoodle that hiked everywhere with us. And so he was sleeping across our feet, and I get woken up to him baring his teeth and growling at the side of the tent, just staring at the tent wall next to me and just growling. And then he starts to bark. And I will tell you right now, he is not that big of a barker. He's not that big of a growler. He's not an aggressive dog. I mean, he's a Labradoodle and he's mostly lab. So you guys get the gist. He is a very easygoing, happy, fun-loving dog. And I wake up to him growling and barking at the fence. And that's when I hear it. I just hear hooves just pattering on the ground across like about a minute off. I hear these hooves and they get louder and louder and louder. And our dog Pluto just keeps barking, barking, barking. I have to shake my partner awake because he's a heavy sleeper. And then the two of us are looking at each other like, Pluto, what are you barking at? Just stop barking. And then the hooves just get louder and louder and louder. And mind you, if anyone knows how deer behave, they don't come near people. Every time I've been hiking and I see deer, they're off in the distance, they're far away. They don't come near us, especially during a thunderstorm. No other creatures were out. As you know, in Appalachia lore, if you don't hear anything, if you don't hear any bird calls or anything, that's typically a sign that something coming near you isn't safe. So the hooves pattering on the ground get louder and louder and louder. And at this point, I feel something is wrong. That's not normal. And Pluto keeps barking at the tent, barking at the tent. And then out of nowhere, the hooves are so loud. And I just see a shadow shoot past my tent, like kind of clips the tent, shakes the tent, and then it keeps going. And at first I'm like, that had to have been a deer, right? But there's something in my gut that feels wrong. Like it doesn't feel right. And Pluto's still growling as the figure disappears off into the distance. And to this day, I don't know what happened because deer don't get that close to tents, especially during thunderstorms. Like I said, it's still raining, thunder's still crashing overhead. It was an all in all very terrifying experience, and I had trouble going to sleep after. But something came past our tent that night. I don't want to think about what it was, but I can guarantee you it wasn't a deer.
So this happened to the girl's family members. It didn't necessarily happen to her, but wait till you fucking hear this. Apparently this happened really close to where she lives because it happened to her auntie. So this girl had an aunt who really wanted to have a daughter, but unfortunately, is it unfortunate? She had all boys. She had an aunt who really wanted to have a girl, but she only ended up having boys. That's what I should have said to begin with. She always desired to have a daughter. She wished she had a daughter, and I guess because she didn't have a daughter, she did end up buying herself a doll. So her niece, who's telling us the story, says that when she bought this doll, she treated this doll like if it was her daughter, and she loved this doll so much, and she would even tell every family member that she loved it. She would shower the doll, she would take the doll everywhere that she would go, and she really did treat the doll like another member of the family. So there was one day where the youngest son ends up getting really sick. He is bedridden for like 3 days, and she would tend to him. So because of this, she ended up leaving the doll right next to him in bed. So on the 4th day where he has been in bed with his mom and the doll, she wakes up around 3 in the morning with this little boy screaming at the top of his lungs. She immediately turns the light on and she sees that her son is on the floor and he's holding on to his throat and he's coughing really bad. And at the same time that he's doing this, he then starts pointing to the door. When the mom walks towards the door, all she sees is that the doll is laying right in front of the door, just there. When she sees that the doll is laying there, the first instinct that the mom has is to get mad at the kid because obviously he had been playing with the doll. And the kid starts denying that. He's like, no, and walks to the doll and starts kicking the doll. She was choking me. Your doll was choking me is what the boy says to his mom. His mom started laughing and grabbed the doll, put the doll by her side, and just went to lay down. Obviously, she didn't believe when he said that the doll was choking him. She thought it was a joke. Now, the crazy shit about this was that the days would go by and the rest of the other sons started to say the same thing about the doll. The boys claimed that they would see when the doll would get up and start walking towards them in bed, and that the doll would even talk to them because she would threaten them. The kids claimed that this doll would tell them that she was gonna kill them. And whenever they would tell their mom, this girl's auntie, she wouldn't believe them because she thought that they were just jealous of the doll, like because she had been treating this doll really well, that maybe they were acting out because of that. So on one particular night, the mom ends up being awoken because she thought she heard like weird sounds, but she didn't end up getting out of bed. She laid there and she actually tried to just go back to sleep. But that was when she felt something really weird and she kind of opened her eyes just a little bit. What she saw was this doll climbing up to get into bed with her. You know, where she was when she first went to sleep, where she should be when she opened her eyes and got awoken. Well, now she's seeing this doll trying to get on the bed with her. This doll was obviously trying to climb back into bed with her to lay in the spot where she was always laying and had her sleeping next to her. The aunt closed her eyes and pretended to be asleep, and then she decided that she was gonna move a little bit just to see what the doll would do. And she said that she just moved one of her legs and that this doll just threw herself on the bed, like Andy's coming type shit. Now the mom, she couldn't help herself anymore. She could not pretend to be asleep. She jumps out of bed, she turns on the light, she wakes up her husband and tells him what she just saw. You're a liar. You just wanted to play with your doll in the middle of the night. Her husband should have been like, you're lying. You're just playing with her. No, so she dead ass grabs the doll that was like pretending to be asleep now, throws her bitch ass to the floor, and tells her husband everything that she had just seen. The husband grabs that doll, they both go outside and they burn it, and they ended up throwing it in the trash can. Now the following day, they actually end up seeing this doll. She reappeared in their yard, and obviously she's looking a little bit scarier being that she was burned. They end up calling a priest, and he comes, he blesses the house, and this priest ends up leaving with this doll. The aunt actually had to move from that house because after everything occurred, she would now end up seeing a woman at the foot of her bed. And they didn't just move like they got their no, they left everything that they owned in this house. It was almost like they just did it quickly. Her and her husband grabbed the kids and they left with nothing. They wanted to leave everything in that house. They didn't want to take anything with them. She ends up going to her sister's house because before they left the town, they stopped to tell them everything that happened just so that they wouldn't go to that house or anywhere near it. And as a matter of fact, the girl telling us the story was 9 years old at the time when she heard everything that happened there. Her aunt, till this day, has one, not returned to that town, fuck that, and two, has never gotten close to another doll again. I wish you would have listened when your kids were telling you, but I guess that's cool though. I want to ask why parents don't listen, but my mom also didn't, and now that I'm an adult, she would say it's because she was scared too, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, even though I'm an adult, I would be fucking scared if I had a kid come and be like, oh, the doll choked me. What? I mean, I would leave immediately. I would believe immediately. I would do something immediately, but yeah, I would be scared too. Like, you don't send me back to my room after I tell you that. What the fuck? Anyway, what do you guys do, or what do you guys think about this story?
Imagine being on your deathbed and realizing that you're not alone, not because of doctors, not because of any family, but because something has been waiting for you for your entire life. And now it's finally time to take you away. So this story was sent to me by a trauma nurse who wishes to remain anonymous, and she told me that she's worked critical care for years, right? She's seen things that most people couldn't handle for a second, and death never really shook her until this one patient had come in. He was an older man in his late 60s, and he was already in the process of dying when he had come in. And at first, nothing really seemed unusual about it, just a quiet decline pretty much, and the kind of case that she had seen countless times before. But 2 nights before he had passed, something began to change with him, and it was around 1:30 in the morning he suddenly became restless, not confused, not delirious, just absolutely terrified. His eyes locked onto the foot of his bed like someone had just walked into the room. And then he started begging, and it was like a quiet beg at first, like a pleading, and then it got louder and louder. Like he was saying, like, no, please, not yet. And it was happening over and over again. And she rushed over to him, trying to calm him down and ask, like, who are you talking to? And he slowly turned his head toward her, and he said, you don't see them? And she looked back at the foot of the bed, and she was like, no. And, there was nothing there to her. But he started crying, and it wasn't a normal cry. It was like he was begging, and it was out of pure fear. And he told her they've been standing there all night long. And he described them as small, almost childlike, but there was something very, very often wrong about them. They were very thin, and they had like a darkness around them, is how he described it. And like he couldn't fully make them out. And he said their faces were stretched into these like demonic like smiles. And I thought of the movie, Smile. That's what kind of came to my mind. And he said that they weren't doing anything. They were just standing there watching him, and what they said was pretty much like waiting for him. And at that point, she tried to rationalize it, end of life hallucinations. It does happen. But she said something about this felt very different, and it was very real. And the second that that second night, it was even worse, she said. He refused to close his eyes, and every time that he blinked for too long, like he kind of dozed off, he would jerk awake, and almost like something had moved closer to him, and it startled him. And again, that second night, around 1:30, 2 a.m., he grabbed her wrist hard, and he pulled her down close to him, and he was whispering to her, "They spoke to me." And she tried to calm him down and was like, what do you mean? Like, who are you talking about? But he just kept, staring at the foot of the bed again. And he said that they said, when it's time, they don't come alone. And she said the moment that he said that, the room got like this icy cold chill to it. And it was very heavy, almost like the air itself got thicker and like vacuumed out at the same time. And then he leaned closer to her ear and he said something that she'll never forget. And what he said was, "They've been with me my whole life. I just couldn't see them until now, because now is the time." And then he looked her dead in the eyes and he finished it with, "They stand behind people, all of us, watching and waiting for us." And she told me when he said that, she felt it like it shook her to her soul. It was overwhelming. Like, she knew that she was no longer alone in that room with him. And even though that they couldn't see anything, something in her mind kept telling her, don't turn around, like there is something there. And a few hours later, just before sunrise, he went completely still and staring at the foot of the bed again. But this time he wasn't afraid, and his face changed, like he recognized what he was looking at now, finally. And then very quietly he said, "They're here." And just like that, he passed. But that's not the part that stayed with her. For weeks after, every time that she worked the night shift, around that 1:30, 2 a.m. mark, she'd catch herself staring at the foot of her patients' beds. And more than once, just for a second, she thought that she had seen something herself. Something small, standing there. Not clearly there, just enough to make her question it. And it was just enough for her to remember what he had said. So now, she told me that she never ignores that feeling anymore. You know, the one where, when the room suddenly goes quiet and for no reason at all, it feels like someone is standing right behind you. So let me know what you guys think in the comments.
I just want to say that I don't think you need to be in recovery to understand that when you do substances, you lift the veil. Sometimes I think some of them are a doorway or a portal to a whole nother realm. This story actually takes place when I was in rehab years ago when I was getting clean, and this story still gives me chills on the back of my neck till this day, especially since one of the counselors was really cool and she kind of did something illegal to help me out with this, and I'm going to explain. This story actually takes place in a rehab center in Pennsylvania, right in the Appalachian Mountains. Now, if you're in recovery, you know for a fact that detox can be a rough place. Well, I remember that I had just gotten out of detox, okay, and my room was up on the 3rd floor of this treatment center. This was one of those days where I was just kind of depressed, just walking around and, didn't really know what I was doing, and next thing you know, I heard what sounded like bare feet on like a tile floor. Like, that sound when someone walks with bare feet and like their feet stick to the floor. So I turn around and I see this girl that she's got like blonde hair, kind of lighter than mine, same shoulder length. And she is in detox scrubs. Mind you, this girl is literally walking like this, like, and I'm thinking, oh my God, she must have just got here. She must have gotten lost and she's on the wrong floor. I look at her and I say, "Hey, are you okay? Are you lost? Because detox is on the 1st floor, honey." This girl literally goes like this. She goes and stumbly turns around and starts walking back in the opposite direction. It's kind of weird that she didn't answer me, but at the same time, I'm like, she's probably really high. So I just start walking behind her, and she's about 100 feet from me all the way on the other side of the hallway. I'm literally going, hey, are you okay? Do you need help? And as I say that, she cuts the corner where the elevator is. So I start running because I wanted to catch up to her because I thought she was just messed up and lost. And I cut that corner literally not even 3 seconds after she did. I didn't hear an elevator open or nothing, and she was gone. Y'all know when an elevator opens, you hear ding, ding, ding. So at that point, I was like, yo, okay, that's kind of weird. I'm sitting in group therapy later that day, and I bring that up to the counselor. Everybody's kind of just staring at me like, yeah, that's kind of weird. This girl probably got lost. And the counselor looks at me and goes, "Sparrow, what did she look like?" Told her exactly what she looked like, and the counselor just stared at me with her eyes like, and then she pulls out a book, and she starts flipping through the pages, and she points at this picture, and she says, this girl right here." I look at her and I'm like, yeah, like who is that? She looks around the room before she looks back at me, and she was like, "Sparrow, that girl died here last week in detox. She overdosed." The whole room was dead silent. All got chills down our spines, and I couldn't believe it because, first of all, that counselor broke HIPAA laws to be able to tell me that. But that was the creepiest freaking thing ever, and I still think about it till this day. If any of y'all have any creepy stories like that when you were in treatment or just in general, put it down in the comments, y'all. I would love to hear it. Follow for more crazy stories in my life.
I'm gonna be real honest with you. If I hear something running at me and I can't see it, I am packing my things and moving immediately. So with that being said, let's jump right into tonight's story. So grab your favorite tea and settle in, and let me tell you another scary story, because of course, this is Tea After Midnight. This story comes from Kay. Hi Savannah, I'm a huge fan of your TikTok series and I figured I would share some stories of my own. This is going to be a long email with multiple stories, so feel free to break these up. I really hope you post about them because I'm curious what everyone thinks is going on within my house. I grew up in a historic neighborhood in Ohio. My house is 101 years old and I'm typing this email sitting in the living room of said home. Growing up, I always had uncomfortable feelings at night, but never noticed anything crazy. That is, until I was in 6th or 7th grade. I distinctly remember being home alone, watching TV with my dog snoring next to me on the couch. It was a snowy evening, and it's worth noting that we have bells tied to the back door, so when the dog wants out, she can ring them. Suddenly, I heard the bells ringing frantically. Mind you, my dog is right next to me. Then I heard footsteps leading into the kitchen and the distinct sound of the pantry door slamming shut. I am so scared that I think someone broke into our house. I grab a pair of scissors and run to hide. When my parents came home, they found me hiding and I explained everything. My dad went to check on the door I assumed the intruder came in through, and what he said next was terrifying. Kay, there's no footprints in the snow. I ended up assuming my imagination was running wild because I enjoyed watching spooky shows. However, one day a few years later, I asked my sister when we were home alone if she ever noticed anything unusual about our house. I was not prepared for what she told me. The first thing she did was tell me to be quiet and that we should go get food. On the way to the restaurant, she told me that we can never speak about the things that happen while we were actively in the house. She said she always noticed that things get worse after she does. She then went on to tell me a few of the creepy things that have happened to her. I am going to directly quote from a submission she sent to another online spooky storyteller. Let me start off by saying I'm not sure if my house is haunted or just a place where things pass through ever so often. I have distinct memories of my childhood of blinds shooting closed on their own and periods of time where things were normal. The biggest and spookiest set of ghost happenings happened about 4, now 5 years ago, during my senior year of high school. It started when I was up late working on a school project. My twin brother came to tell me he was going to bed, and he walked out of the kitchen where I was. A few minutes later, I heard the distinct sound of the footrest of the recliner being snapped down. I assumed it was my brother and that he had sat down for a sec. I go and check, and yep, he went to bed 10 minutes prior to when he told me. I assumed if I didn't address it, it would just stop, right? Wrong. The next week, I'm at the side door waiting to walk out to the car, where my brother was waiting to go meet my parents for dinner. As I open the door, I hear something sprinting through the kitchen towards me. I make terrified eye contact with my brother that clearly conveyed my inner monologue of fear that an invisible boogeyman was about to run me down. I finally came to my senses and slammed the house door. Some time passes and it's now the very end of October if my memory serves me correctly. Buckle up because this is where it gets real. I need to describe what the layout of our house is like for you to properly visualize what comes next. Our kitchen has a back staircase that links up to the main staircase. It's super steep and runs right up to the dishwasher so we don't use it. It's just storage space where we keep kitchen appliances and beverages. The base of those stairs is directly adjacent to the countertop that has the dishwasher, the oven, and the sink. So I'm at the sink washing some pans from dinner late at night. I'm the last one awake. Out of my peripheral vision to my left, I can clearly see that staircase. I see a very clear shadow figure bent down with its hands on its knees, head cocked all the way to the side, staring at me. Well, I was not cool by being perceived by this spooky figure. I turned to confirm what I was seeing, and it's gone. I know this wasn't a trick of the light because this was a solid figure. I was so sure that I thought for a fact one of my siblings was playing a prank on me, but now there was nothing there. Weirdly enough, after that, everything stopped for a while. My younger sister, me, who's sending this email, started to experience things though, like her foot being yanked while sleeping at night after I went away to college. I try not to think about that when I go home and sleep in our shared room. She mentioned my foot being grabbed at night in her story, so the next story I'm going to tell you was around my sophomore year of high school. I was up late into the night after my parents had went to bed. Suddenly, I heard the distinct sound of metal scraping across the kitchen floor. Me being the first to debunk things, I went into the kitchen and found my dog's water bowl across the kitchen from where it usually is. Thinking it was just my dog who pushed it, which she has never done, I called her name. She ran downstairs, meaning that she was upstairs with my parents the whole time. I was so spooked that I called my sister and told her what happened. It is also worth noting that this is the same dog that would stare into empty corners in our house and growl. The final story I will tell you is the most recent encounter I've had. 2 years ago, I was up late again playing video games with my friends. It was around Christmas time, so we had our Christmas tree up. To turn on the Christmas tree lights, you have to step on this little red button. I found one online in case you're confused by that description. I was going to go to bed, so I went to turn the lights off. When you step on it, it makes a very distinct click. I stepped on it, it clicked, and the lights turned off. I turned to walk away, and about 5 steps away, I heard click. Scared out of my mind, I turned around, and sure enough, the Christmas tree was turned right back on. I turned the lights back off and ran upstairs to bed. I agree with my sister that things aren't consistent in happening. My dad is skeptical about our house being haunted. However, even he has a story where he thought he saw a figure lying on our couch at night before realizing everyone in the house was upstairs. I have never told my sister my theory about why things only really seem to happen consistently to us. Things only happened to my sister at first. However, when she started being out of the house more often during high school and eventually moved away for college, it seemed as if it moved on to me. Things then only happened to me. I am now moved out for college and am not home nearly enough to notice anything crazy. However, I will say whenever I'm on the phone with friends telling these stories, I usually hear a loud bang coming from somewhere inside the house. Rule number 1, don't speak about what happens while being inside the house. Kay, I do want to say that I definitely think your house is haunted. There are just too many things that have happened to you guys that can't just be explained away. I think the scariest part to me, like I said, was something running at your sister, and she couldn't see it. She could hear it physically running after her, but she couldn't see it. That freaks me out so bad. So the other part that really freaked me out was the Christmas tree. I could literally not imagine clicking it to turn it off, and as you're walking away, you hear it click, and then the lights come back on. I don't know what I would have done in that moment, but it would have absolutely sent shivers down my spine, because that is so scary to think you're walking away after clicking it off, walking away, and you hear a click. I would have froze and not been able to turn around. Oh, I almost forgot about the part where the shadow figure was on the stairs. Just kidding, I think that is the scariest part to me. She's standing there doing dishes. Okay, picture it, you're standing there doing dishes. Out of your peripheral, you see a shadow figure. You're looking at a shadow figure that's bent down, its hands were on its knees, its neck was bent crooked, looking at her. Absolutely not. No. But Kay, thank you so much for sending in your story. I really do hate that you guys have been going through this, and luckily now that you're off to college and your sister's moved out too, hopefully it kind of settles down and you guys don't have to deal with that anymore. But it is very, very strange, and anybody in the comments, if you have any idea what this could be or why it sticks in the kitchen, please let us know. But that does conclude this episode of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal scary stories you want to share, I would love to read them. You can email me at the email on the screen or the email in the caption of this video. But as always, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have the best night. I love you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.
So listen to me.
Most people think that ghost stories aren't real, but this one, even a US president said that he witnessed it, and he was terrified. I'm talking about the Bell Witch haunting in Tennessee, early 1800s. A normal family started hearing scratching, knocking, something moving through their walls at night. But then it starts talking. Full conversations, answering questions. It said its name was Kate. And not only did it talk, it targeted people in the house. It would slap them, pull their hair, even pin them down while they slept. And this wasn't just the family. Neighbors, visitors, entire groups of people claim they heard and witnessed it too. Even Andrew Jackson reportedly came to investigate. When he left, he said he'd rather fight in a war than face whatever was in that house. Then the father, John Bell, suddenly died, and this entity claimed it poisoned him. And before it disappeared, it said it would come back. Ultimate question, what was it?
So who's in the mood for some more Midwest ghost hunter?
That sent a jolt down my spine.
I know I am. So tonight he's investigating the Roselawn Cemetery, which is supposed to be one of the most haunted cemeteries in Minnesota. And dude, this fucking place does not disappoint. It even has a freaking warhorse by the name of Dawn.
Dawn.
Alright, so he's exploring the cemetery, just making the rounds. When suddenly...
Whoa, what the f***? Did that just move?
the angel statue literally turns on its own, facing in his direction. What? He then walks over to the mausoleum with his K2 meter and asks whoever's buried there, which is a person by the name of Pearson, if this spirit did in fact move the statue. And he gets all sorts of spikes on his K2 meter. And then he asks one final question, or should I say, a request.
I have a request for you if that's okay. Since you moved that angel statue just now, would you be able to move it again? If so, touch the green light. Ooh, okay. Let's see if it moves. What?
And the freaking statue moves again. Dude, how sick is that?
I cannot believe that.
That's pretty freaking amazing if you ask me. And it's also the reason why I love cemeteries so much. There's so much energy in those places, anything crazy can happen. I mean, you might even get the spirit of a horse whinny and gallop on by. A fucking horse. Dude, love the paranormal.
A group of hikers says they captured something half human, half horse in the Appalachian Mountains. According to her, it started with a strange sound coming from somewhere far away. They couldn't tell what it was, but they decided to follow it. What they saw shocked them. She immediately pulled out her phone and started recording. In the footage, you can clearly see what appears to be a centaur. For those who don't know, a centaur is a creature from ancient Greek mythology, half man, half horse, and honestly, there's no logical explanation for why something like that would be there. But here's what made people stop and look closer. After researching it, this wasn't the only video. Others claim they've seen the same thing in the Appalachian Mountains. In all of these clips, people keep their distance and quietly record because there's no guarantee something like that would be friendly. So what do you think this really is? High quality AI? Or is Appalachia hiding more than we think? Share your theory in the comments.